Welcome! In this video we're going to be taking a quick look at May, the new legendary grade tank class Elune. Looking in at her stats, starting off she has a really nice HP of 51.8k with decent PDEF and MDEF at 5.8k each. Her speed at 106 does put her about at the mid-range as far as speed goes, so her base stats are quite good for a tank class. As she's transcended up to the max at +5, her stats do go up to a very nice 93.2k HP and a 9.8k each PDEF and MDEF, making her a very tanky Elune, which is very good because she is a tank class. Let's go ahead and take a look at her skills. Her first skill, this is a standard normal skill. The only exception is that this skill can attack any enemy, not just the front line only, which is unique to tank classes, as she can hit any target on the battlefield without having to target frontline only first. It is just a standard physical damage skill, and leveling it up to the max does let it do some damage, but because she's a tank, it's never going to be quite that much. Looking in at her special skill, this is a self buff that she gives to herself. This is a 2-soul only skill, so it is very cheap to use and doesn't cost too much to do, but does help her quite a bit. This skill increases her evasion rate by 15% at level 1 for 3 turns and gives her a healing over time that does 15% of her HP every time she receives a turn. As the skill is leveled up to the max at 6, the skill does go up to a nice 30% evasion rate and an enhanced buff that makes her heal over time up to 30% of her HP every turn for 4 turns, meaning that this skill can be used quite often and can help keep her alive as well as evading damage, which helps with her passives. This skill does not stack, meaning that if you do cast it more than one time before the duration of the skill is gone, it does not add 2 effects of the healing over time. Instead, it just refreshes the heal of time and the evasion buff back to their 4 turns. So you cannot stack it and get 60%. It doesn't work that way. It just replaces the existing buff that is there with another one that just refreshes the time back to 4 turn duration on her. So keep that in mind. You're not going to be able to just stack this every turn to get her with an insane amount of heals or evasion. Her ultimate skill, this is a pretty decent ultimate skill. At level 1, it does pretty decent damage and does a physical effect that bleeds, and it's a curse effect that also causes panic, both of which are for 3 turns. Now, depending on whichever status effects or how many she lands on the enemies, as this is an AoE, she will get a damage reduction of 4% for 3 turns for every one of those status effects that she lands. In other words, if she lands, say, 2 status effects across all the enemies, then it's an 8%. If she lands, say, 5 of them on an entire team, she lands 1 status effect of the 2 that she's applying to just one person on each one, say 5 times, then that's 5 times the 4%. That makes it a 20% damage reduction that she gets. However, if she has good accuracy and she can land all of them, meaning 2 per enemy for 5 enemies, that's going to be 10 status effects that she lands, which means a 40% reduction in damage that she takes. Now, when you level this up to the max at 6, the damage does go up to an okay amount of damage as physical damage. The duration of the bleeding and the panic effect does go up to 4 turns, and the amount reduced per status effect goes up to 8%, meaning that if you are successful at landing it on an entire team, you can reduce the damage that she receives by up to 80% for 4 turns. This is very significant, as she will take very little damage at this point. Now, with testing of this, if you're curious, this effect, because it also is a damaging skill to land the effects, it can be evaded. So if it is evaded, then the status effects do not land. Why is that significant? That's a significant thing because it will not affect things like the Reaper, because the Reaper will evade the damage, and if it evades the damage, the status effects do not apply, meaning that she will not be able to land the bleeding or panic effects. This is something to keep in mind, so you'll need to know that. her first passive. This passive makes her very good at protecting the weaker allies, so you can put a squishy DPS on your team and not have to worry about it dying to most things unless it's instant killed or it dies to DOT type damage, because this skill will treat the lowest max HP ally as what she says here, as her master. What this does then is she takes any of the damage that is done to that ally, she takes the damage instead, and she will also remove a debuff from that master immediately upon receiving a turn. What this means is that you can put her with a squishy DPS type unit, and it doesn't matter if they're in the front line or back line compared to her, and she will protect that ally with a soul effect that can't be removed. Anytime that ally is attacked and damage is done to it, the damage is redirected to her, so the ally takes 0 damage and she takes the damage instead. If that unit is, say, paralyzed up by, say, a Chloe Van, and that's the only debuff on them, as soon as May gets a turn, she will cleanse the paralyze off of the ally, and then still keep the damage reduction to herself, or the damage redirection to herself. This is done when the battle starts. At the beginning of the battle, this is assigned and does not change throughout the battle. So if the person she is protecting is killed, say through an instant kill, this effect does not go and affect another ally. It'll just stay onto the first one that died, and it does not protect anybody else. So if the ally is instant killed, which does go through this, because instant kill goes through everything, then that ally will no longer have this, and she will not be protecting anybody anymore, but it is still an effective way to protect a squishier unit, especially from those nasty revenge procs from the Judge passive of Artemiel. She can protect it to keep it alive, so you don't have to worry about it dying to him every time that it attacks. The second passive here, this one allows her to evade damage. This increases her chances of evading special skills by 15%. This is in addition to her normal evasion rate anyway. So, in any time that she is targeted and a special skill is used, her evasion rate to that special skill goes up from her base evasion rate plus an additional 15% so that she can evade it. This effect also works against the enemy ultimate skills, or rage skills in cases of PvE mobs. This goes up to a 30%, meaning that if she is attacked with a ultimate skill, she has her normal evasion rate to evade it plus an additional 30%. This works very well with her special skill that also buffs her up so that she has quite high evasion rate, and she has a very good chance of evading the skill damage completely. And if you evade the damage, it does not apply anything, including the instant kills, as the damage was not applied, which means the skill does not instant kill. Looking at her third passive now, this one is another good passive that also helps her out a lot. What this does is it increases the chances of her evading attacks of the enemy with lower current HP than what she has by an additional 20%. This means if you build her on high HP and an enemy DPS is trying to attack her and do damage to her, or something else is trying to do damage to her, and they have lower current HP than her, then she has a 20% increase in evading any damage that she takes, meaning that they have a high chance of not doing anything to her. The other effect of this passive, which is nice, is the spell effect that it applies on an attacker if she evades their damage. This spell effect puts Confuse on the attacker for 1 turn if she does evade their damage by any method. So having her on good evasion is something worth having, because that puts Confuse on the attacker, which means that anybody that has Confuse will attack an ally instead of attacking your team. It'll attack one of the allies that's on their team. It also means if they try to buff or something, it means it buffs you instead of them, which is very good. The other part of the effect of this passive is that any enemy with lower current HP than she has can't resist her debuffs. This means that her ultimate skill that applies debuffs means they don't get resisted if they have lower current HP than her, so building her on high HP to make sure that she has higher current HP than everything is a good option for her. You're still going to want to build her on accuracy because she still will need accuracy to land those things, and you can still have the resistance done if the resistance is high enough on them, like from a special skill from like a Trent, which puts up a protection if they're at max HP. It means they have an immunity to debuffs, so they can still be resisted in those cases. Looking into the skill gems for her, her primary skill recommendation is red, red, orange for physical damage, as this skill is a physical damage skill. What it does is a 5% chance to stun the target for 1 turn, as the skill really doesn't do anything else and is just a multi-hitting first skill anyway. Having the chance to stun the target, considering she can attack anything, is not a bad idea, and since the skill really doesn't do anything else, that 5% chance to stun could be helpful, so why not do this? As anything else, it really doesn't matter. The next skill for her special skill, this one is Yellow, Yellow, Violent. Now, this one restores HP by 5% when she uses it, which means she puts a heal of a time on herself as well as an evasion buff, but she can also restore her HP by 5%, which is a small heal every time she uses it, and she can spam it on every turn, essentially, as it is only 2 souls. This means this is a pretty good option to go with and put the Yellow, Yellow, Violent gems on this, so that she can have that heal pretty often to herself and making her a little bit better at self-sustaining. But going also with a Yellow, Yellow, Yellow skill could help with the evasion too. However, in my opinion, I think going with the little extra HP heal is good unless you're running her on a team that has lots of healers. As far as her ultimate skill, this one is recommended as a red, orange, violent for physical damage, crit rate, and violent. This one has a 10% chance of reducing target's attack by 10% for 2 turns. This is completely up to you if you want to do this one or not. It's okay. It's just it's a minor chance to a minor debuff or attack on it, but it is an AoE, so the chances are you could apply it to at least one enemy team whenever it's done. You have a decent chance of doing that. However, it's not a great chance, and you could go with something better on this, or just a different, maybe not better, but at least a different option for her. As far as the dimension slate for her, things that you would want to focus on or anything to help with her evasion, of course HP, definitely go with HP. Physical magic defense, as she is a tank, you're going to want her to be tanky. Speed isn't bad, but you're going to want to focus on things like HP and evasion so that she can evade those attacks, and that her passives as well as her buffs will come into play, allowing her to evade most things, and that's a good idea for her because you can use her as an evasion tank, but if she does take damage, it's going to be severely reduced. Looking in for gear for her, you're going to have several options for gear. Anything that can boost her stats to take less damage for physical magic defense is something that you're going to want to look into, because that's going to really help her to make her tankier. HP in the offhand slot is definitely recommended, as you want her to have as high of HP as you can so that she has that higher chance of evading damage, as well as the ability to not have debuffs resistance, especially when she does her AoE. Things like that are going to be something you're going to want to go for. A full moon set, even a partial 3-piece set, to have that 25% chance of landing debuffs will help her still too. As well as you could go with a full moon set if you wanted to, but then you don't get the HP in the offhand. Tank sets would be good for her to allow her to take less damage. Just to boof up her stats, plus anytime once she drops the first time below 50% HP, she ignores all damage for 2 turns. This can help if somebody is focusing down the person that she's protecting and just using that method to help kill her, to do more damage to her because she's tanky, so they're just doing the damage to that Elune instead and just having her take all that damage. This means that they can whittle her down because you can take advantage of that mechanic by attacking the Elune that she's protecting and doing damage to that Elune, and that damage, the reduction in damage and stuff, is going to be based on the Elune that she's protecting. It's going to be based on their defenses, which in most cases is going to be a DPS, a squishy DPS, and that's just going to mean she's going to take a lot more damage hitting that Elune than would be attacking her directly. The other advantage to attacking that Elune to work her down is the same situation as dealing with Fahrenheit when he protects everybody. That the Weiwei buff for healing when attacked doesn't get triggered if the damage is coming from a redirection, meaning that if the entire team has Weiwei on it, or has the Weiwei buff on your entire team, and she's there and she's protecting another enemy, then when the other enemy is getting, or when your other ally that she's protecting is getting hit, the Weiwei buff will trigger the heal on that ally that she's protecting and not trigger it on her, even though she's the one taking all that reflect damage, or that redirected damage. So that means that she will lose her HP, but she will not get the heal because it will not trigger the Weiwei buff to heal her. So it is a way to whittle her down so that you can basically abuse her passive to kill her by hitting the squishier Elune and not have her heal from a Weiwei buff, which again is why her second skill is so important to her, is because it can heal her. Then when she gets a turn, she heals herself by 30% of her HP, so that's very significant, and that's something you're definitely going to want to make sure you spam on her, because it's going to be a way to keep her alive. Otherwise she could just be easily killed by, you know, taking advantage of the other mechanic, the damage redirection mechanic of her. Anything, if you're earlier in the game and you want to use her as a tank, some earlier gear sets that you'd want to use, anything that gives an evasion buff on her, like going with the set here for the Discipline Elune, or Disciple Elune set. This one is good because it gives a plus 15% evasion rate at the end of every odd number turn into your next turn. So this will boost her evasion rate whenever you do it, meaning that she will have additional evasion on her by 15% in addition to all of her passives and her skills and stuff to give her evasion. Other things you could run with her is you could run Karu with her for that evasion passive. As her HP gets lower, she has a higher chance of evading. That's going to help her get up to 100% evasion really quick. Another thing you can do also to help her with evasion is run a Miho with her, because the Miho has an evasion buff. That means that she evades damage all the time, and whenever that happens, the Miho works really well with her, because if an ally evades damage and they have the Miho buff on her, then your team gets a soul every time that they evade damage, which means a Miho with Mei and a Miho with a Reaper on your team also. So you could have a Reaper on your team, a Mei on your team, and then the Miho, and then you do the Miho evasion buff. That means every time that, say, your Reaper attacks and an Artemeal revenges, there's an evasion, there's an extra soul. Anytime somebody attacks the Mei, there's an evasion, there's additional souls. So you can really boost your souls to keep your team with tons of souls all the time, just by using that evasion mechanic in Mei's passive of buffing your team with souls every time they evade damage. But it also buffs crit rate, which means every time they crit also means that you gain a soul, which is also helpful to the Reaper, because the Reaper's skill 2 always crits. So then the Reaper is basically helping you stack souls, as well as Mei evading any direct damage helps stack souls. So, you know, take advantage of teams and build teams together with her, so she works well. Again, like I said, she works well with the Reaper, and she'll work well with a Reaper, say a Reaper Miho team, because then they gain souls at a really constant rate, so you have tons of souls all the time for your team, which means you never have to worry about stuff. And the other two that you want to run on your team for a 5-man can be, you know, various other things that you need souls for all the time, say for other buffs or something that you want to do. So teammates for her are, she is quite versatile on it. She can protect squishies, she can evade damage, making her very strong. She can help your team gain souls if put with a Miho because of that evasion. So she can be quite good. She can be quite annoying to deal with too, just because of that evasion. So if she's built with high evasion and with evasion buffs, then she can be quite annoying to deal with, because it's going to be really hard to do any directed damage to her. You're going to have to try to do damage to her by hitting whoever she's protecting instead. So if you find her on defense and you find that you're missing, or she's evading too much damage, try just attacking whoever she's protecting, so that you can do stuff that way. You can try to knock her down that way. However, if she does protect something like a Reaper, it really doesn't help her, and it doesn't hurt her either, because the Reaper that she's protecting is just going to be evading all the damage anyway, which means you're not going to have any damage redirected to you, so it's not going to matter too much. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or anything or comments or whatever, or anything that you want to know or that I didn't go over, let me know, and I'll address them and answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.